to raise kids, whether it's middle school or teenagers right now, because
Mm.
there is so much of peer pressure which is there right now. And we
From about 10, 11 upwards, they're thinking about, oh, I'll just do what my friend does. I guess what I've learned, especially over these last 7 years, is that
from the Garden State, New Jersey, from one mom to another, it's time for Mom's Talk. Here's Avani.
Welcome, Supermoms, to another episode of Mom's Talk. Our today's guest is joining us from London. She has done extensive work in the field of clinical psychology. Welcoming Asha Desai. Asha, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure, Avani. I'm
Asha,
looking forward to it.
Sure. I want to start off by asking you about how your childhood was and what made you interested in this field of psychology.
I think growing up in Africa, where you're exposed to a lot of different things, different cultures, different experiences. One of the things that I used to do is go from one part of a country, Zambia, to Zimbabwe. And I used to go and see my little cousin who was in a special school there. Mm-hmm. And in my holidays, I used to love going there because there was a lot of it seemed like a fun place to be in. There was a lot of play. I could see that my cousin was really sort of developing, and I was interested in how come he wasn't talking, how could we get him to do stuff that we were doing as kids, so trying to get him to be sort of more inclusive with us. And I suppose my interest in behavior kind of started then. And if you think about it, psychology is the study of behavior. So I guess, I think the roots of my interest in human behavior started very little. I was about 12, 13 when I kind of knew what I wanted to do. It's a bit unusual to kind of say that, you had a vocation, but there was something about wanting to work with children with disability that fascinated me right from very young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wonderful that you found out what you are interested in doing, because usually it takes forever for people to realize that, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm interested in doing. And that makes it a little bit more difficult for them. But as you mentioned, it's a study of behavior. There's, I think it is kind of solution oriented, the nature of the work that you do. And by saying that, I just feel like, when you listen to so many people's problems all the time, this might be a little bit overwhelming for you and tiring. How do you compartmentalize the psychotherapy and kind of separate it from your personal life? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I wasn't thinking you were going to go that way, but you caught me there. I was thinking more about what I took from psychology is not so much the problem-focused approach. I really am not a problem-focused person. So, and I think that comes from the fact that my parents and their parents went off to Africa and were entrepreneurs and were always trying new things, being very positive. And I think that's kind of definitely influenced my thinking. So I never saw that, my cousin not being able to talk or not being able to do things as a problem. So it was very much looking at how do we build on strengths. I'm naturally kind of raised in that atmosphere at home. When I picked up psychology, it was very much about, you can learn about problems, you can learn about diagnosis, you can learn about different approaches. But I think the mindset I've always had is be positive. Try and look at why somebody behaves the way they do, and then spin it so that you can use it for their, growth. That's how I've always seen, psychology. And I suppose, how do I separate the problem-focused work that I do with my own personal life? I don't really separate them. I guess I'm not thinking I do work this way and I do home this way. Even in my own personal life, I'm very much on the, looking towards the positives. So, I think we spoke earlier about, getting, how did I raise my child, for example? I didn't need to shout and scream at him and hit him, because you don't need to do those things. If you work on the praise, on the reward, and yes, sometimes there are consequences for things that go completely wayward, they go out of your moral code. But otherwise, really, I focused on, how to build on self-esteem, how to build on skills, the things they're good at, expand on them. The things they're not so good at, you don't need to criticize them. You know that there's certain things they're good at and certain things they're not going to be able to manage. And that's the same with all people, isn't it?
That's true. I think I really like the way you said that you look into the positive side of things. And a lot of people do talk about work and personal life balance and how hard it is and how hard is it to switch from one mode to another. But I like what you said, that if you think about all the positives, you don't really have to work on separating the two.
Yeah.
So that is a very good point that you just touched upon over there. About raising kids, as you said, that the way you have raised your child, and you're a grandmom now. So
yes.
the way you have raised it, and there has been this trend nowadays where parents kind of refrain themselves from giving their child harsh punishments, and which is a very good thing. That's a good thing that we are doing right now. But as you rightly said, in the process, it becomes difficult for the parents to deal with certain things. How did you deal with the toddler tantrums that you must have faced?
Yeah. So, I guess there are the skills that I learned from psychology. I did use them, obviously. So things, there's a technical term, but often praising the things when you see that they're doing well, when they don't anticipate you praising, is really good, because it means that they notice, so when I do this and this, my mom actually pays attention, so I just must do more of it. But if you tend to pay attention to just the negative things, then what happens is that when they want attention, they think, the best way to get this attention is by doing that negative thing. So misbehaving. Yeah. So it's a technical behavioral term, but that's basically what I used. So one of my classic examples I often, tell people is that my son was about 20 months and he insisted on having something. And I said, no, it was not appropriate, a pair of scissors or something in his hand. So I took it away. And he was banging his head on the carpet. And I thought, right, just walk away. And I walked away with the scissors, obviously. He had nothing in his hand. And he knew that I'm not going to get attention for having a little tantrum. Didn't have many tantrums after that. So I think it's about what's that first response? What's that child learning from how you interact with them? That kind of sets, like a little rule for them. And once they understand the rule, it's, no means no. Yeah, but if you say no all the time, then obviously it's not going to work.
That is so true. And it is kind of hard at that moment to just, to stick to your own decision. But I think, like how you rightly said, you got to be strong too. And right from the beginning, you need to set these unspoken rules, from your the behavior and the kind of the amount of attention that you give in such times makes a difference. So out of that situation, come back, I think, because toddlers, when we especially talk about that young age, they don't know what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. But this is a wonderful, wonderful way of, training them in a way where they don't know that they've been trained, or and at the same time appreciating them even when they are not expecting it. I think that's a wonderful way to deal with such things. That's lovely, Asha.
Okay.
Going from there, a lot of viewers are interested, and a lot of moms usually talk about how difficult it is for them to raise kids, whether it's middle school or teenagers right now, because there is so much of peer pressure which is there right now, and we see so many incidents, even on the news, about teenagers or middle school kids. So much of peer pressure, and it becomes difficult for the kids as well as for the parents to kind of guide them in the right direction. What would be your thoughts? I would love to know your thoughts on how to give them the sense of self and the strength to deal with this kind of situation.
Yeah. So currently I work as a family therapist in exactly that children and family setting. And you're right. It's, from about 10, 11 upwards, they're thinking about, oh, I'll just do what my friend does. I guess what I've learned, especially over these last 7 years, is that the kind of guidance parents give. Firstly, I think one of the major things is about parenting styles. So mothers and fathers' parenting style, or grandmas or granddads, wherever they're living. Some children live with, foster carers, whatever. The idea is that kids know that if they want something, they can get it from one of the parents if they are a little bit more lax or if they give in easily. So they're testing us all the time. And I think the idea is that as parents, you've got to be one step ahead of them. So very, very much thinking, well, yes, we're going to allow sleepovers, at the age of 12, not 8, like others would decide. We're going to definitely put our boundaries around going out and staying late. Sleep time should be in a certain time. So if you've set your boundaries together as a couple, or if you're a single parent, you need to keep to those, boundaries as well. Then the child understands that this is what I'm allowed to do and this is what I'm not allowed to do. And then you try and explain why you're putting in these boundaries, because as they get older, they don't just want to be told what to do without a rationale. So you need a reason with them. And the other technique is to negotiate with them. So if they say no, five of my friends are going to see that movie that's just come out. And what's wrong, Mum? One of their dads is coming anyway. So you need to negotiate. So there's a bit of sort of, they feel like they play a part in that conversation that it isn't. But I think there's an age where you kind of, as a family, you agree, this is the age they have to follow rules. And then this is the age you start negotiating and having conversations with them. And then I guess the stuff around, your family values, your family scripts. I mean, these are really important things. So they'll have heard stories, so if I say in my family that we all work very hard, and that is a value that we have. I noticed that in my brother, my sisters, my cousins, all my nephews and nieces. We all have that value base because we've seen our parents do that. They've seen us do it. So if you behave in certain ways, they're constantly observing you. So you model the kind of stuff, the behaviors you want to see from your children. So if you think that having weed at home is an okay thing, well, then you can't expect them to think it's not an okay thing.
That is so true. So true.
So I think that's a kind of conversations that you have to have early with them. So one of my parents recently said, we were really upset. He got caught by the police, for cannabis on him. But we didn't think he would do that. But both of them did. And in their teenage years, they started. They reduced it as they got older. But then they started explaining to their child about why it is unlawful in this country to smoke weed. Secondly, definitely should be caught by the police is pretty stupid. And if you are, then you've got to take the consequences. And if the consequences are a warning, then you're lucky. But if the consequences are it's on your record, that has impact on lots of other things, like where when you have a job, they'll ask for, have you ever been in touch with the police, with the law? So you will lose your chances of what's going to happen in your future. So if you don't have those conversations with your children, then they're not going to know. So, often families watch programs on telly or they hear the news and it just goes off people's head. And I think that's when they're a teenager and they're in that conversational thing over breakfast or dinner or whatever, even during the movie, have those conversations. So, you can have one angle of it, somebody else can have a different angle of it, but you want to get your child to understand that he can have an opinion. So I want to be told to shut up. He's going to have an opinion, but he's got to be able to learn for himself, decide for himself that actually, my peer group are about to do something really bad. That I join them or shan't I? And he needs to learn how to make those decisions, he or she. So those are the kind of things that, I think us mums, we're so busy with work. We've got the home life, the work life, the kids, there's a lot of pressure sometimes, our parents as well, we're worried about, and dads, dads are just as busy. And sometimes you just think, life just plods on, and you don't have those conversations. So a lot of my family therapy is all about how do we communicate more with each other. And I think that's really, really important. And I've taken that, leaf out of my father's book. He always sat and talked to us. So, and told us about, stories of his childhood, then now I'm doing it with my kids and hopefully with my granddaughter. So I think those are the things, those stories which are positive. You want to, keep on, using those.
That is so true.
Rather than going, you'll bring shame to us and, it'll be awful. If you go on all that negative stuff, they just feel that you're giving them a hard time for nothing, And I think that's the thing. It's to get those kids. So there's a really interesting story. I was at my cousin brother's house here a couple of years ago. And we were talking about music. And the daughter said, and the son said, Ashanti, you know all this music, Drake and all that. I was like, if I'm not up to date with all the music, and I'm, 60 or whatever, but if I'm not up to that kind of, what conversations I'm going to have with my nephews and nieces? I'm on a different planet. So that's it. Try and be up to date as much as possible, so that you can have those conversations with your kids. And you can say, I heard that music. What did you think about it? And then you're really families where there's a lot of, difficulties, or maybe children are in drill music or whatever. You want to be curious. You want to find out how come they got there? What is it that they find interesting? And to get their sense of belonging back to your family. That's that's a trick, basically.
And that
it doesn't
so
matter
true,
that they can marry in other cultures. I'm very open-minded like that. But there are things about values that are something that are precious to most people. And
it goes a long way.
If they don't have strong values, it's because perhaps they've been lost on the way. They haven't had that parenting, that they required.
That is so true, Asha. I completely agree with that. I think establishing that friendly relationship with them right from the beginning makes a huge difference. And there is another thing that you said, it's very important, is that as parents, you also have to grow with them. You have to keep up with the trends so that you can continue having these conversations with them. When you do that, they feel like, you are their friend, and they can open up to you and having these lovely conversations, whether it's good or bad, makes a big difference.
So, like you said, well, the teenagers nowadays are into gaming, into drugs. You really need to get onto the systems and find out how to do all that. I'm not brilliant at IT, but really, they are so super intelligent. They're all, they know so much, and to keep up with them, it's hard, I have to say. So it is hard work, but I think, take that interest, so that if they are, if they say things like, oh, let's go down for edibles, you're like, what's that? And I've had to learn all this. So, so that those are sweets that have got cannabis in them. And if you don't know these things, they just, going to walk all over you.
Yeah, that is so true. I think, while because it's hard, because you have your work, you have other responsibilities. And on top of that, you're thinking of keeping yourself updated with all the things that they are doing. But I think a good way to do that is to spend time with them, doing such activities with them that'll help you, that'll help them, and that'll help the relationship of parents and kids together. And you'll have that time too.
Absolutely. Once they're sort of 13 or so, they really don't want to spend too much time with you, do they?
Yeah.
They want to spend time with their friends more. But if you have, when any of my son's friends came home, my husband is a brilliant social sort of being, and he would chat with them and find out what's going on. Sometimes they ring him, and I think, oh, what they're ringing you for? But it's like, it's that thing. If you don't know who the friends are, then how do you know who's putting what pressure on your child?
True.
So,
true.
Getting to know who they are, you don't have to be very, very inquisitive, but at least to know, like, are they from the same school? Are they from the street down the, so getting sort of, and I think kids just find that, okay, as long as you're not too interfering, they just think, oh yeah, they want to know who my friends are, just like I know who my mom's friend is.
That is so true. And like how you mentioned before earlier, that letting them know about the consequences of the things that they can get into is also very important. That way they'll know, because they can know in an easier way of what is right or wrong, instead of just directly telling them, hey, don't do this. This is not right. It's not a good thing to do. But explaining them, giving them a reasoning, giving them the exposure of the consequences that they can end up into is also a good way of, keeping them on track.
Absolutely. Keeping them on track is it's all about that. Because there's so many, I suppose, what do you call them? Things that motivate them to do, and attract them, that may not be that brilliant in the end. So there's a lot of that around. And I think unless we know, that there are parenting controls on the computer, on the telly, even, if you don't do any of those preemptive things, preventative things, you only got yourself to blame, really. Isn't it? Because you've got to make that effort. And I have to say, hats off to parents nowadays. It is really tough. It wasn't that tough for me, but I'm already thinking about, when my granddaughter grows up, gosh, should we stay in London or should we go into the countryside? It's like really, already worrying, and she's only turned 1. So I think it's kind of thinking about what are the things that, what aspirations you kind of instill in them, and if they're not particularly academic, there's so many other things that a child can do. But you've got to find that little niche. What's their niche that they're good at?
I wanted to ask you something. I know you mentioned that you grew up in Africa. What, why London? I mean, what brought you to London?
There's a lot of stories, really. I guess one of the things was that I was in Africa till age 13, and then I actually went to a boarding school in India.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and that was a huge learning curve. Yeah, definitely made my cousin and myself very resilient. You're in a completely different culture from an African, very laid back. You have everything there, but it's not modern, as such when we were there. And then you go into a boarding school in India and you're thinking, oh my God, these nuns are so strict. Only baths twice a week, and food that was yuck. So there was a lot of sort of growing up to do in those couple of years we were there. And then my brother was going to be sent to boarding school in Scotland. So I was like, well, I'm not staying without my brother, I'm going with him. So when I finished in the boarding school, and Mumbai just used to make me freak out in the holidays. So I said, I'm not going to university in Bombay. So I thought, oh, this is a nice chance. I can be near my brother. And we both moved to Scotland. So I did my A-levels there and then went to university there. So that's how I got here into the UK.
Okay.
And then my parents came up and stayed with us in Scotland. It was too cold for them. So they moved down to London, and we used to come in the holidays to London. Yeah. So that's how that trip happened, to be connected with my family, which is really important to me. Was the main reason that we both, were near each other in boarding schools.
Okay, all right. Now, you said you were 13 when you got this big culture shock from Africa to India, and that to boarding schools, because they are pretty strict and they have stringent rules that you need to follow. Was there at that age, that teenage years are just starting off and having this big of a change, how did you deal with that kind of a situation? Did it make you uncomfortable, or how did you deal with that?
I think the fact that I had my cousin Kusum with me definitely was a bonus, because we were both going through the same thing. So we could, cry on each other's shoulders, and there was a lot of crying that happened. I think the other thing was, there was definitely, my father definitely knew that this was going to be hard for us. So I'd already been in a convent in Africa. So I was kind of used to the nuns. But he used to send us these big baskets, troplas or troplis, you all, full of different fruits, and then lots of food for us. And tuck was the thing that Kusum and I used to love having as a backup. when we weren't so happy, we know we had a lot of tuck in the cupboard, and we could go and have some whenever we wanted. So the fruit was, that what is it called, the koru and all that, really bad bread as well. We used to make sure we always had, something that love from family that was there. So we held on to that, really.
All right. So that was the secret.
That's the secret. So maybe that's my relationship with food that kind of started around there. And everybody has a relationship with food.
Wonderful,
sometimes
wonderful.
Good, sometimes not so good.
I think it's always good to have something that will take you off from all the other things that are going on in life and give you sort of a peace and a break from there.
Because there are children who are taken away from their parents in this country, or they've had to be in boarding school because their families are diplomats or whatever, the whole scale, the whole gamut. And we know young kids nowadays, there's so much around mental health issues, they might self-harm. But rather than, having conversations with my cousin, having the food there as representing our parents' love. That was how we kind of, and that's why I think both of us were so resilient. By the end of it, we could face anything. So we were really spoiled as little children, had everything we needed, a very privileged background, and suddenly you're in this, boarding school with basically nothing. It was hard. It was very hard. And very regimental, and oh gosh. So I think and then interests that we had, academic as well as sports. There was a lot of sports there, so it was kind of balanced out. We didn't just survive. I think by the end of it, we quite loved it. I wanted to leave, but we quite loved it by the end of it. And we made some solid friends. So up to now. I'm still connected to all my Panchami friends. We're all over the world. We still connect.
That's lovely, Asha. And I think when you talk about your love for food, I just felt like I want to do a rapid fire round with you.
What's that about?
So are you ready? That
rapid fire round. Okay.
Rapid fire round. All right, real quick. 5-star hotel or camping?
Oh, 5-star hotel. I'm sorry. Every time.
All right. Hollywood or Bollywood?
Hollywood, I'm afraid.
Okay. All right. You're keeping up with, your grandchild trends and everything. So,
no. Yeah. I think if you cut all the songs in Bollywood, I might go for it. No, the glamour is too much in Bollywood for me.
Is that right? Okay. Dancing or singing?
Singing, I think. I've always fancied myself as a singer, but I don't think I'm very good.
We'll do one thing. We'll have the dancing together when we meet.
Yes, definitely.
Because I cannot sing at all.
You're welcome to come to London anytime.
Sure. Asha, one last thing. What would be your message for the moms?
I think mums and dads all over, just keep loving your kids. It's the behaviors that sometimes you don't really like, but you do like them, you love them. And that's what I often say to kids. I say, your mummy loves you. You know that. It's just this little behavior, maybe we could just and switch it a bit to, something more positive. So have a positive mind and try and look at all the strengths in your children so that you can build on those. And that just builds a wonderful relationship, isn't it? Then?
That is so true. That is absolutely right. It has been such a lovely conversation, Asha. You have given us such good insights and tips of how we can build that positive, friendly relationship with our kids, and how beneficial can that be for the kids and for the parents as well. Thank you so much for your time, Asha. It was such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Hi, this is Avani from Mom's Talk. Help me spread the word and join me on my mission of motivating other moms by sharing the video. Thank you for watching.